welcome to the 390th episode of the Video Games podcast, where I talk about any game at all, including new stuff, old stuff, and anything in between. If I am playing it, I'll be talking about it. Today, I am recording on May 28th, 2024. My name is Brad Galloway. I am not only the host of the show, but I'm also the editor of GameCritics.com. All right, folks, as usual, today's show is going to kick off with housekeeping, where I discuss tidbits, news items, industry happenings, basically anything randomly game adjacent. And I say, let's get to it. First off, everyone knows I'm a huge 40K fan, at least as far as video games go. And there has been a big event happening, the Warhammer 40K Skulls event. Now, while Warhammer 40K and Warhammer in general is a tabletop thing, originally it's spun off into many different venues, and Skulls, the online event that's happening right now, is specifically dedicated towards the video game adaptations of all things 40K. Actor Raul Coley, the guy who played Ravi on iZombie, he was also in, was it Midnight Mass? I think that's what it was called on Netflix. Great actor. He's a super fan. He's been hosting the thing. They've had lots of events, some streams, all sorts of announcements, trailers, all things 40K. It's been a pretty cool time if you're into that stuff, and I definitely am, as you probably already know, since I talk about it every other episode, if not every episode. I think the biggest thing to know is that everything basically is on sale. Practically every 40K game that's still available has been like really deeply discounted. Now, one of my favorite RPGs from recent years, Rogue Trader, that's 30% off right now, which is great. I mean, I would have been happy with it at full price. I think it's a fantastic fucking game. Rogue Trader is awesome. 30% off. Also, new DLC is coming, which I'm very excited about. Martyr Inquisitor, which is probably my favorite Diablo-like of all time. Even taking the 40K stuff out of it, which I think is great already, but just the mechanics of it are really brilliant. I like those a lot. It's from Neocore, I believe. They're really sharp developers. That's 80% off. It has a bunch of new content, a whole bunch of DLC, new modes, new classes that are coming. Also, Mechanicus, the turn-based tactics game, which features the Adeptus Mechanicus, the tech priests who are all like cyborgs from 40K. They had an announcement saying that Mechanicus 2 is coming, which is super exciting. Very looking forward to that. And, it's funny because I took this opportunity myself personally to go into Steam. Now, you guys know I don't play a lot of PC games, but some of these games are only available on PC, and I figured I had to bite the bullet with such deep discounts and everything that I've been thinking about playing on sale. I decided to go for it. So I ended up buying, like, honestly, I think about $70, $75 worth of games. And I don't usually spend that much on games, but I think I got like so many complete editions, and I got so many other like one-offs. I got some of the Gothic Armada stuff, which is the ship stuff. I got the original Space Marine. I got Dawn of War, like 1, 2, and 3, and all the DLC and all the expansions and stuff. And there was a bunch of other stuff that was in there as well. It was just, I mean, and some of these games are like $2, $3, $4 each. So how could you say no to that? So it's great stuff. By the time that you hear this recording, there will only be 2 days left in the sale. Sale ends May 30th. So jump on that if you want to. There's probably not going to be a better time to get caught up on your 40K game stuff than right now. And you can also look forward to all the new stuff coming out. Space Marine 2, Mechanicus 2, the new stuff for all the, for Battle Sector. Very excited about that. So lots of good 40K stuff if you're into that. Moving on, there was a recent Kotaku interview by writer Kenneth Shepard, who I want to give huge props to, because I don't know what's going on with journalism these days, not only in game journalism, but in other venues as well, where I feel like so many journalists just don't fucking take a side. Like sometimes they just, it's like they seem like they're trivia robots where my only job is to present the facts, and that's just not what journalism is. And so I read this article by Kenneth Shepard, this interview with Neil Druckmann, of all people, the guy who's behind The Last of Us, auteur Neil Druckmann, some would say. And Kenneth Shepard, the writer, his voice was so clear. It was so clear where he was coming from, and I just really fucking appreciated that, because this interview was about Neil Druckmann, and AI. Now, AI is on everybody's lips right now, and honestly, I'm kind of over it. But in this interview, basically, Neil Druckmann was saying, I think AI, literal quote, could redefine mainstream perceptions of gaming. And I'm like, can you please just tone your shit down a little bit? I mean, talk about bombast. I mean, talk about hyperbole, right? Like, number one, what do you think mainstream gaming's perception or mainstream perception of gaming is? Number two, how in the world do you think AI can change that perception when we've got so many talented artists and writers and programmers and animators, all these people working their asses off on a daily basis for probably not enough money for too many hours with no union? And like, how the fuck do you think AI is going to do this? So as you read through the article, he didn't say this specifically, but I think it was pretty clear that Neil Druckmann, his idea of AI essentially is to fire all his writers and have AI do the writing. But of course, he's the director, and his stance, from what I gathered, is that, directors you can't replace. Directors got to be human, because that's me. I'm Neil Druckmann, and I endorse this message. But I'm going to fire all my fucking writers. I'm going to have AI do it, and then that's going to make a better game? Dude's insane. He's fucking insane, and I think it's double insane because he is a guy who's gotten famous basically on the strength of his writing, whether you agree or not. I think his reputation has largely been based on, The Last of Us, at least the first one, and a lot of people say the second one. I don't think the second one's nearly as good, but whether you like it or not, I mean, the character, the writing in those games is really what has made his career so far. And to see him sit there in this fucking article and say, yeah, man, AI, we're going to do a bunch of writing and I'm going to direct it and I'll be in charge of this. It just made me sick. Made me sick to my stomach, and it's kind of reinforced a lot of the negative talk that's been happening with Neil Druckmann lately, where, I don't know the guy personally, but I've heard many stories of where he sounds like he's getting quite full of himself, and this just seems to lend credence to that. And anyway, circling back, Kenneth Shepard, the way that he wrote this article, it was pretty fucking clear he was being very critical of AI used in this way, and also critical of Neil Druckmann's stance, which I fucking appreciated, because reading this turned my stomach, and so I really liked that the author did not shy away from having his own opinion, which I think is the correct one. So excellent work, Kenneth Shepard. Thank you for that good read. Also, fuck you, Neil Druckmann. You sound like a fucking idiot in this article. Again, don't know you, nothing personal, but Jesus, watch your mouth, buddy, because you sound like you're an insane person. Okay, moving on. I got a very interesting interaction with someone on Twitter yesterday. Out of nowhere, I was checking my notifications, and I saw someone reply to me. I didn't know this person. Their name was The Big Bridge. So thank you, Big Bridge, for reaching out. And it was giving me a tip about a game. And I'm like, oh, they're giving me a tip. And, I do that sometimes. I'll go to Twitter and I'll be like, oh, I need some help with so-and-so game that I'm reviewing. And sometimes I'm reviewing a game that maybe is under embargo or just got out from embargo. Maybe there's no Let's Plays yet. There's no FAQs. And so, sometimes when I need some help, I'll go to the Twitter sphere and I'll be like, hey, is anybody playing this? I need some, anybody know how to get past this part, or anybody solve this part or something like that. It happens. It happens. And so the Big Bridge sent me a message on a game, and I read the message and I was like, what? The message was, rush to Nebula's location ASAP. Throw a potion to extend the movement and range of the first warrior you moved. Once you're close enough, a cutscene will occur, making Nebula an ally. He will be fully playable once you finish the first wave of Fast Nights. And in parentheses, late advice, but ... and a heart. And I was like, what game did I ask for help on? I don't remember this. And so I clicked on the message and I scrolled back, and this is why I love Twitter, dude. This is why Twitter will never be replaced, right? So the Big Bridge, in the year of our Lord 2024, I almost said 2023, but 2024, was replying about Natural Doctrine, a game that I barely remember playing because I played it on August 26, 2014, literally almost a full decade ago. The game was released from Nippon Ichi Software, NIS. I think it came from Kadokawa. It was originally for the PS3, also the PS4, also the PS Vita, if you've ever heard of that thing. So almost 10 years to the date later, I get this tip about how to get past this difficult part for a game that I barely remember that I played 10 years ago. So it brought a huge smile to my face. I thought it was so funny. And we had a nice exchange after that. I thanked them for the help. And it was just so unexpected and unusual that someone would reply to something 10 years later. But I guess that's the magic of social media and the magic of like online communications, Twitter, etc., etc. So anyway, I just that was a real hoot. A real hoot. As per usual, got a couple questions from people who are listening to the show, which I'm always really happy to get. Let's get to these questions right now. All right, first couple questions come from good friend John over at Gaming in the Wild, he of Reykjavik. John says, what do you make of what's going on at Xbox lately? Seems like a worrying picture with them closing these successful studios. Yeah, I kind of touched on this a little bit when I first made the announcement a couple weeks ago or whatever it was. And honestly, what's going on at Xbox? I don't think anybody knows what's going on at Xbox. Honestly, I feel like it's probably just a lot of too many cooks in the kitchen, right? Like, I think there's too many people who don't have a cohesive vision. And, Microsoft is one of the largest corporations on earth. I mean, they're huge. Their headquarters is just 15 minutes away from my house here in Redmond. I've been to the campus. It's enormous. Millions of people work for Microsoft, and I think there's this kind of friction. I mean, again, not an insider, not an expert, but I feel like there's just friction between the overall Microsoft behemoth and then the smaller factions within who have a love of gaming or who want the Xbox to be a superstar. And I just think that there's just these like competing factors, and neither one of them really gets their whole way. And so, what they say about compromise, right? The only successful compromise is the one where everybody's unhappy. And I think that's kind of where they're at right now. I suspect there's probably a lot of compromise going on. Maybe the game division doesn't get, all the decisions it wants to make. And the corporate wants it to make more money and doesn't care about the games, honestly. And I don't know, man. It just seems like a big mess. I feel like they need a really strong leader, but also that leader needs to have enough cachet and enough, gumption to get stuff done. And also, I think Microsoft needs to kind of get serious about it. And it sounds weird to say Microsoft get serious about gaming, since they've, they're on their third or fourth console or whatever and generation, and they have all these studios. They've done so much, but honestly, at times it seems like they just don't really lean into it enough. I feel like certain aspects do, like like Game Pass coming to existence was awesome, and I think that's a great step in the right direction. But then they do something totally backwards, like the studios closing you mentioned. Like, why would you buy a bunch of like really high profile studios with, basically infinite talent there, and then give them all these dumb games to make that they don't want to make, like hire, fire, reshuffle, open, close, move things around. Like if you didn't want what that studio did, why would you buy it? Just to get rid of it? That doesn't make any sense. Would you buy it because the IPs? Well, you've shit on all the IPs. That doesn't make any sense either. I just think that there's like this weird competing instincts, and they're just not really on the same page about anything, which is a factor in real life as well. Like, if you have a relationship with two people and you're not on the same page, that relationship is going to really struggle to move forward. If you're in an office where the boss is looking one way and the employees are looking a different way, you're going to struggle with that. I mean, it's kind of like the same thing. I mean, there's so many instances where if not everybody's on the same page, the whole thing doesn't move forward. And I feel like that's just really what's happening here. I think there's a lot of competing interests, a lot of competing ideas, a lot of people who do not share the same priorities and goals. And this is what happens. You see this weird stumblefuck of, we're going to spend a bunch of money now, but then we're not going to spend some money later. And I really want these studios, but then we're going to dissolve the studios. And we really want to have these blockbuster games, but then we don't really care about the games. It's just weird, man. I think they just really need to crack down and get one person who is going to be powerful and in charge and can lead the gaming division to greater success. And it's got to be somebody who cares about games. It can't just be another corporate stuffed shirt. It's got to be somebody who loves games, who plays games, who understands games, and really wants them to succeed. And I just don't think they've been there yet. I know that they've had a couple people over there who seem to have been the right folks, but then they always get undercut or something happens. And honestly, I think just the upper people above the gaming division just keep kind of messing things up. So that's just my guess. That's just my gut instinct. I don't have any like insider info. My uncle does not work at Microsoft or anything like that. So I don't know for sure, but whatever it is, I agree with you, John. It is definitely a worrying picture. Next question from John says, do you have any hopes, dreams, fears for Star Wars Outlaws? Yes, I do. I have all of those things. So I guess basically I just want it to be good. That's my only hope, is that it's good. I think what I really want is I want them to lean into the characters and the story. I really want them to, and if not the story overall, certainly in the smaller stories. Now, for example, let's talk about one of my favorite games of all time, probably my favorite game of all time, The Witcher 3. And John, I know you specifically are not a fan of this. That's okay. Love you anyway, buddy. You're still good in my book. But The Witcher 3, one thing that I think makes it so brilliant is that they took so much time to let us know who Geralt the Witcher is, Geralt of Rivia. Whether you like him or not, that game is chock full of so many instances of him saying things, of doing things, of having choices that all kind of lead back to who he is. And so I don't know the name of the character in Star Wars Outlaws, but I want them to spend that much time with that character as well. And if the main story isn't great, I mean, hopefully it is, but sometimes it's not. If that's not great, what I really want is these smaller stories to be great. And that follows the Witcher template as well, where the overall story of Witcher 3 about, God, what was it, the Wild Hunt or something? See, I can't even remember because it kind of didn't matter. But the individual stories are really what made that game so fucking amazing. Like when you get to that little town and the Baron is having his wife disappear. Like it seems like a no big deal quest at first, but when you get inside of it, you're like, holy shit, this is something that I'm not sure that I've ever dealt with in a game before. When you get to like a small village, even some of the small incidental quests, like I remember I think there was one where a woman thought wolves were stealing her chickens, and actually it was a couple of kids that were abandoned in the woods. And so you go talk to the kids. I think there was like a werewolf story where like the werewolf didn't want to be a werewolf and he was having some struggles, but he couldn't die because he was a lycanthrope. And like all these little stories where maybe like when you do them all told, they're like, I don't know, 20 minutes, half an hour, maybe an hour for like some of the really chunky side quests. Those really make the experience. I would love to do that same thing with Star Wars Outlaws, where you have a really well-written character who we get to know, has a lot of personality. They're not just a cipher. And then you go on these quests, and the quests have just as much personality as the main character. That to me would be the absolute greatest success story for the game. That's really what I hope for. In terms of mechanics and stuff, I mean, I want to have engaging combat, of course. I want to have some fun side activities. And I'm honestly really scared that it's going to be just another like open world thing. I don't want that anymore. I know the individual quests of Witcher 3 is amazing. And also I want like density of content as we've seen in Elden Ring. Like I mentioned last episode, you can't go 5 steps in Elden Ring without stumbling across a treasure chest with something cool, or a boss, or an NPC, or a side quest, or a really cool castle or something. Like there are very few just empty spaces in Elden Ring. And I know that's hard to do. And I'm not saying everybody has to be to that level, but I think people should shoot for that. Like, I think that should be the idea should be, you should never be in just this giant, wide open space of nothing. Every area should have something unique to it. Every area should be something different. Now, I just talked about Rise of the Ronin last episode. And in fact, I'm going to jump ahead to my script here because I'm pretty sure, yes, I am talking about it later on in this episode. So I'm not going to belabor the point now. But Rise of the Ronin, I think, is exactly the kind of thing that I don't want to see in Star Wars Outlaws. Just in brief, like a lot of cookie cutter objectives, a lot of content for content's sake, but none of it really stands out. I want my time to be well spent there. I want to feel like I'm in the world of Star Wars, but it's got to be not just, riding banthas in a race or going to the top of a moisture converter to activate the map or whatever. Like, it's got to be something that really means something. And one fear also is that they're going to just do like a nostalgia trip where it's going to be just like reference after reference after reference after reference. If you're a Star Wars fan, then you love it. And if you're not a hardcore Star Wars fan, then you kind of feel left out. I want them to do something new. I want them to like create new fiction, new world. I mean, yeah, okay, Darth Vader's going to show up, make a cameo. You can't really make a Star Wars game without that. Cool, whatever. But like, don't make it about that. Like, I want to see new stuff. And really, kind of like when The Mandalorian dropped on Disney Plus, the first series, if nothing else. When The Mandalorian came out, it was like a new thing in the existing familiar framework of Star Wars. And I loved it because it was new characters, new story. It wasn't all based on just like going back to fucking Tatooine for the millionth time. It wasn't about Luke Skywalker. I mean, it eventually got there, but like, for the first season anyway, it was just this fucking awesome thing of where it was in the world, but new. And that's really what I want for this game as well. So hopefully those things will come to pass. The good things come to pass. The bad things will not come to pass. And I just really want them to take time and make it something special, because I think a lot of us who have even a small passing interest in Star Wars have wanted something along these lines for a long time, just to be let loose in the world, just to kind of be there and not have to follow the fucking Skywalker saga again, not to have to fucking blow up a goddamn Death Star, but just to like just be in the world, meet the aliens. Like there's got to be a jillion interesting stories, a lot of interesting people to meet, aliens to meet, a lot of places to go, things to do. Like there's got to be more to the Star Wars universe than just those things that we've already seen 10,000 times. So I hope that they lean into it, and I hope they make it as rich story-wise as the Witcher 3, or as content rich as something like Elden Ring. So I know that's like a pretty tall order, but hopefully they can do it. And if anybody can do it, I think Ubisoft can do it. So we'll see. Last question from John. He says, hey, have you heard from Carlos lately? How's he getting on? Yes, I have heard from Carlos lately. I just talked to him a couple days ago on the phone. Because Carlos is an old school guy and he likes the phone. I hate the phone, but he likes the phone. Yeah, we had a chat. He's doing okay. He's just doing some gigs, and he's, just taking some time, and he's got some projects going. He's got some new online endeavor that he's doing. I don't know if I'm okay to talk about it. So I will not say what it is right now, but he's got this thing going and he's making some money off of that. So I'm excited for him. It sounds like he's got some interesting irons in the fire. So he's doing well. We talked a little bit about games. He said he had a good time with Sandland, which I also had a really good time with. I'm not done with it. Kind of put on the back burner for a minute, but he's enjoying that. He played some other games as well. We just chit-chatted, we text here and there and stuff. So still friends. He's just doing okay. Just had to take some time off, and that's what he's doing. So he is well. I'm sure he would appreciate hearing from you. If anybody listening wants to send him a message of support, or just like say hey or whatever, you can hit him in Discord. He's still in the Discord. Or if you want to hit him up online, he's still doing his videos and such. So send him a message if you want to hear from Carlos. I'm sure he would love to hear from you. All right, next question comes from Slugcat Stew over from the Gaming in the Wild Discord, one of my favorite places to go, one of the friendliest corners of the internet for sure. You can join the Gaming in the Wild Discord. I think it costs at least $1 a month if you want to join. If you listen to Gaming in the Wild, the podcast itself, which you should, you probably already do. I love the Discord. For me, it's definitely worth $1 a month. Absolutely. Met so many cool folks there, had so many cool conversations. So Slugcat Stew was asking me, how the heck does somebody do a 4-island run in Into the Breach on normal? I mean, is it even possible? That's my question, but I love that game. Slugcat Stew, man, yes. So I think honestly, Into the Breach is one of my favorite turn-based tactics games. I've talked about it before in the show. I've done everything in the game. I've got all the achievements. I've beaten the game with every team, etc., or at least before the DLC. I think there's one team that was in the recent DLC that I haven't beaten the game with, but 99% completion in that game. Been through it many times. And I got to say, I think that doing a 4-island run is certainly possible, but I think it just really depends on a couple things. So number one, just practice. I think you just need to practice that game a million times to kind of really know how the aliens work, what their tactics are, like what's the important thing to prioritize in each mission. It takes a while. It takes a while to just get the ropes. Then I think you have to have your favorite team. There are so many different teams. I think there's 12, 16 different teams of mechs. Each team is 3 different mechs. Now, some of them have regular synergy from the get-go, and some of them I honestly feel like struggle. Like I feel like some teams are definitely harder than others. I do not feel all teams are equal, and it kind of depends on your play style. But my suggestion is test out each team at least once and see which one really works for you. But if you can't find a team that synergizes on its own in the way that you like, use the custom option, because there is an option. I think it's unlocked, or maybe you have to unlock it. I can't recall, but I remember it's not too hard to get. You can get the custom option, which means you can choose any mechs in the entire game and make your own custom team. So if you like one mech from a certain team, but you like a different mech from another team, like put together your own dream team and stuff that seems to work in your head, like strategies that work, attacks that work, make your own synergy, and that'll help a lot. Also, the other thing that really is clutch, that I find is one of the most difficult aspects of the game to grasp, for me anyway, is that number one, you have to pick the right pilots. If you have the right pilots, at least one from the beginning of the game, each pilot has their own abilities. So choose a pilot that has an ability that complements what you're trying to do, and that should be the synergy of your team. So find somebody that like makes it work. So for example, if you've got a really low health mech that has a good power, get a pilot that has like one shield every turn. Or if you've got a mech that has low movement but they have a strong, support ability or something, pick a pilot that's got like high movement. So like find a pilot that complements that. And then collect pilots as you go. I know that it's randomized, so you don't always have a choice, but hopefully don't forget you can choose pilots as you go through the game. And especially if you're doing a 4-island run, you probably will have at least a couple pilots drop that you'll have the ability to get if you get the extra choice. So you may not know this. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But if you complete every mission on an island, all the side requests, like, all the requests that people give you, check off all those boxes. Don't miss anything. If you do a perfect island run, you'll get extra rewards at the end of the island, and often those are extra pilots. And so sometimes you can get a really good pilot that synergizes with who you have, but you have to kind of play it like a higher level to make sure you get those extra rewards. So do that as well. And then on top of that, you got to choose the missions that give you the right bonuses for what you need. So if you have a mech that has a good power, but it requires 3 or 4 energy cells, make sure you're choosing missions that give you enough energy cells if you complete them. And then you have to upgrade accordingly. Now, this is also really difficult as well, because sometimes a robot that seems like just okay, if you power them up a little bit in the stat screen, they become awesome, right? Like maybe there's a robot that has a weapon, it shoots like 3 squares. You're like, yeah, it's okay, I wish it went further. And then you check their ability screen and it's like, oh, he can shoot up to 6 if you power him up. Then he's like super amazing. You got to really, so like there's all these factors, right? Power up the robots correctly in accordance with the synergy and the strategy you're trying to do. Get the pilots that support that strategy. Try to get more pilots as you go. And then also get the robots that you feel the most comfortable with. And if you don't have a team you feel comfortable with, make your own team in the custom option. And then practice, practice, practice. I wish there was an easy way to do this, but there's not. It's just a really deep, rich, complicated, nuanced game, and there's a lot to it. And I think it's really rewarding. I mean, you seem to be liking it just as much as I like it. And honestly, dude, I put buku time into that game, like tons and tons of time. It wasn't just like I did one and done and I maxed the whole thing out. I mean, it took me quite a while. It was my game of, not my game of the year, but like, it was like my game that I came to throughout the year when it dropped on Switch. And so I was playing it basically every night before bed, like, daily for the majority of the year. So I put a lot of time into it. So hopefully some of those strategies will help. So hopefully some of those tips will make some sense, and hopefully they'll help you up your game a little bit. I want you to have every bit of success, same success that I had, and hope you have as good time with it as I did. We can talk about it more in the Discord if you wish. So good luck, happy hunting. Go get those Vec, my friend. A couple more questions, and we're going to bounce to the main portion of the show. Good friend Elijah, who is a writer for Game Critics, also in the So Video Games Discord, the other friendliest place on the internet to be. I'll get to that in a second. Elijah says, or he asks specifically, if you could learn one game development discipline, what would it be? Good question. I have literally no desire to get into game development whatsoever, because I feel like if I did become a game developer, I would start to hate games. I don't want to engage with games in that way, because I just really love games. Always have loved games, and it's something that I enjoy. It usually is a de-stressor for me. They take me away to these fantasy places. It's kind of a detachment from the real world when you need that. I wouldn't want to undo that for myself. And what I mean by that is, for example, a lot of friends of mine are in filmmaking, or they're in theater or something like that. And they have a very difficult time looking at a movie in the same way that you or I look at a movie, right? Like if you know about camera angles and what camera angles are supposed to do, if you know about specific lighting, if you know about specific, the names of shots, if you know about all these different tricks that you can do, I notice my friends watch a movie, and instead of watching the movie, they're like, oh, they did this cut. Oh, that was amazing. Oh, they did this. Oh, they used this one sound effect. That was great. They kind of like mentally pick it apart the whole time, and they don't engage on it in the same level. So I think that they still enjoy it, but like not in the way that I want to enjoy it, right? Like when I go see a movie, I want to just sit back and just be taken away and be absorbed and involved. I don't want to think too much about the craft of it or whatever. And that's just me, right? So same thing for games. When I play a game, I don't want to be thinking about, oh, how did he rig this animation? That was amazing. I can't believe he got his elbow to move that way. Or, oh my God, the skybox is so convincing in this one. How did they do that? You know, like, I don't want to think about that. I want to just be like in the game, in the world, having fun, a little bit of escapism. So that's kind of how I'm hitting that. But I will answer your question. If I had to learn one thing about game development, I honestly say it would be about planning and budgeting, because being at Game Critics and our focus on accessibility, I definitely want to have more game developers think about accessibility and plan for it ahead of time. A lot of times I see teams who are like, I'm a small team. I'm only 2 people. I'm only 7 people. We can't do it. We couldn't do subtitles. We couldn't do controller remapping. We couldn't. Well, bullshit. You can. You either didn't think about it, or you just didn't prioritize and didn't plan for it. So if it was up to me, I would make it a requirement for all games. Kind of like how almost all TV and all movies have to have subtitles these days, at least in America. Once you require it, all of a sudden becomes possible, right? So I think that if we required it, more teams would make it possible. I think there's solutions. I think there's skilled artisans out there. I think there's people who know how to do this stuff. And so I would just make it a strategy, a theory, a plan that everybody who's going to make a game had to budget properly. So you couldn't do too many crazy things if you didn't first allow for subtitles, allow for certain accessibility, like an easy mode or whatever your accessibility is. You got to plan for that stuff first, and then put it in from the beginning. And then once that's in there, everything else will just be built on top of that. I think it's possible. I don't think it's too much of an ask. And so I would be that guy with the clipboard and the calculator. And I would be like, look, I'm looking at your budget. We need to take away, you cannot have 84 million polygons. You can only have 82 million polygons. The money we would have spent on those last 2 million polygons need to go to subtitles. And that's what we're doing. So I'd be that guy. I'd be the budgeting, discipline, accessibility guy. I want to learn that technique, that discipline for work, for games development anyway. Okay, last question from Elijah. If Call of Duty does come to Switch as promised, would you rather they port older games better suited to the system's spec, or lowered fidelity versions of the latest games? How about neither? Neither. Number one, full disclosure, I don't give a fuck about Call of Duty. I have played them in the past. I don't care about them. If that franchise vanished off the face of the earth, I wouldn't even notice for like a really long time. And then when I finally did notice, I'd be like, whatevs. So know that. But in my experience on the Switch, and I have a lot of experience on the Switch, I play it almost every day. Most of my gaming happens on the Switch. I would like to see a Call of Duty built specifically for the Switch. How about a brand new Call of Duty that took advantage of the Switch's hardware specs, of the features it has to offer, the gyro stuff or whatever. Like, let's just make something that works for the Switch. Now, I am not a person who wants the same kind of experience. I mentioned this on the show before, where I think AAA, big budget, bombast, that belongs on the PlayStation or the Xbox or PC if you swing that way. Switch is small. It's got a smaller screen. It's got a different control layout. It just does different things differently. And I think there's probably a whole world of possibilities where you could do something on the Switch that made a lot of sense, that could still be a Call of Duty product, but would not have to be constrained by lack of horsepower, or it wouldn't just be some dusty old fucking old ass game that probably a lot of people don't really give a shit about. So for example, back in the day, way back in the day, back in the olden times, right after the last Brontosaurus died, and I know Brontosaurus isn't a real dinosaur, but whatever. So Killzone, back on the PS3, Killzone, if you remember Killzone, that was kind of like a semi-flagship title back in the day. And I'm going to get this wrong, but hear me out. First-person shooter, big budget, bombast, explosions, guns, blah, 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 blah. Like, it, you know, it sold copies. People liked it for a while, whatevs. They did a couple of these for, and I want to say it was the PSP, or was it the Vita? I don't remember. Doesn't matter. But they did a couple of handheld versions, and what they did was different. Rather than being a first-person bombastic shooter, they made one of them a top-down, kind of more of a tactical shooter, and I thought it was fucking great. Still Killzone, but absolutely a different approach, different structure that really capitalized on what that particular handheld system could do. And honestly, if you look at the handheld versions compared to the big budget versions, I think all of the handheld versions are actually better than the larger versions, just because I think they're tighter design, more interesting designs, not just like first person stuff. So I think that if you took that approach of let's do a Call of Duty, but let's do something different. Let's do turn-based Call of Duty. Let's do top-down isometric Call of Duty. Let's do Call of Duty farming. I don't know, something, anything that would be more suited to the Switch. That would be my vote, because I think the Switch has a lot to offer. I think it's a great system in general, but I think you need to play to its strengths. And I don't think that squeezing a giant AAA downscaled, downsized thing onto it would do justice to the Switch or to the game. And I don't really see the value in bringing anything super old, because would anybody really care about those? They probably would be super dated. And, you know, like I have a hard time imagining the COD crowd would be up for playing those old ass games. I think you need something fresh and something new that is built for the Switch. So that is my answer. All right, folks, that was housekeeping. Gosh, I need some more coffee. Just full disclosure, I usually record these shows at like 11, 12 in the morning. 11 in the morning, 12 in the afternoon, whatever. But I'm on a slightly different schedule right now, and it's 7:20 a.m. I've never recorded this early before, so please forgive me if the mouth is slipping, if I seem a little disjointed. I've only had literally one cup of coffee, and that is not nearly enough. So I'm going to get another cup of coffee, and then we will proceed. But before I do that, that was the housekeeping section. Before we get to the main portion of the show here, just a quick reminder that you can help support the podcast by going to patreon.com/the Videogames podcast. Every little bit helps with the monthly cost of hosting, and your help would be appreciated. And of course, a big, really big thanks to all of our Patreon supporters who are already putting their money where their ears are. Thank you so much. Every dollar is mega appreciated to help keep the show running. Also, heads up that there is a Videogames Discord, which I mentioned earlier. Any listener is welcome to join free of charge. If you want to continue the conversation after you listen to the podcast, just shoot me an email and I will send you the details. All listeners are welcome to join, no cost whatsoever. Okay, that is the opening section of the show. I'm going to go get that coffee, and then we shall get into the main portion. All right, main portion of the show. I like to start off with my circle backs, which means I'm circling back to something I talked about on a previous episode, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen right now. As I alluded to just a second ago, I was playing more Rise of the Ronin. This is PlayStation exclusive, coming from Team Ninja, the people who made Neo 2 recently. Big fan of Neo 2. I think those are fantastic Souls-likes that are firmly within the genre and yet different enough to be their own thing, which I think is a great place to be. So big fan of those. And for that reason, I wanted to check out Rise of the Ronin. I talked about it last episode in depth, and basically it's a third-person open-world game using a lot of the fundamentals that we saw in Neo. You play a team of samurai who are in Japan at the time when Americans are coming to the East and they want to like establish trade and, you know, bring goods and, you know, have a relationship across the ocean. That's a period in Japanese history that gets covered a lot. And honestly, it's not very interesting to me as an American. And I wish that they would do something else, because especially Team Ninja, I feel like brings up these themes a lot of like the Americans coming east and causing trouble with the I don't know, the feudal system that they had going and stuff like that. I'm not an expert in Japanese history by any means, by any stretch of the imagination, but these themes come up a lot. And honestly, I mean, maybe I would find them more interesting if I was a Japanese person and steeped in Japanese history. But I find that whole period just like enough. Okay. Like I'm not interested in that anymore. So I think the basis of Rise of the Ronin is kind of not that exciting to begin with. It's also playing with history a little bit. Like, again, I don't know the figures or anything, but like a lot of the story is just like, oh, this American guy came here, we're talking to him, and this other person came here, we're talking to him. And it's like, I don't really know who these people are, and they don't really sell them. I think it's almost like a checklist of like, if you're a fan of the historical period, you might get a kick out of knowing who these people are and recognizing them, but I don't think they do a good job of selling the drama. So the story in Rise of the Ronin, as I've put more time into it, is just really thoroughly boring. There is a central plot where you, the main character, are looking for your lost sibling. That's fine, I guess, but again, not a lot of drama put into it. The side quests are all pretty boring. It's all just like, hey, I'm getting robbed. Hey, I need to get this thing back. Hey, I need this thing. It's very basic. So none of the plot lines, none of the side quests have been even remotely interesting, which is a bummer. But, I know that storytelling is not Team Ninja's strength. And so I was hoping that the mechanics where they usually shine would be enough. And honestly, it would be enough. But this is a strange stumble for them. They've had 2 really good hits in a row. And I was surprised to see that they kind of fell down on this one. So, as I said, open world. This feels like an open world game. It was just released, I believe, this year, 2024. It feels like it could have come out 10 years ago. It feels like a very, very basic, unimaginative approach to the open world genre. It's like tons of area. Lots of area is just empty. When you get to a place where something's going on, it's like the same 6 events over and over and over, just carbon copied across the map. There's towns that are overrun by bandits, so clear out the bandits. And honestly, those are probably the most fun because of the combat, and the combat is really the only part of this game that I think is really that super interesting. There's like, find some cats and pet the cats. There's pray at a temple. There's do some horseback riding and target shooting. I mean, it's like the same stuff every time you get to the next land. It's just like, oh, okay, the same 10 objectives that I just did. I got to do those again here. And there's not really anything varied about them. It just totally feels like checking off a list over and over and over and over and over. It's like the worst kind of open world game where you're just so bored. And I was like, okay, well, I don't really want to engage in these things. Yeah, you get some rewards. Yeah, you can level up and get some bonus weapons and armor and stuff, but I just didn't care. And eventually got to the point where I was like, okay, I'm going to just mainline this. I'm leaving behind tons of side quests and side activities because I just don't want to do them anymore. They're just not that interesting. So I'm going to just focus on the main story. I'm going to mainline it and just push through. And it just is really meandering. None of it is exciting. I don't really feel anything for my main character. I don't really feel anything for what's going on because, again, it's like, hey, the Americans are coming, and do you support the Americans or you don't support the Americans? And, I didn't really care either way. Not strong emotions being raised, not really feeling very involved. So I feel like the open world stuff was really dull and dated and just really out of touch. Really old school in a bad way. I felt the story was really dull and not intriguing on any level. And so that just left the combat. And unfortunately, the combat is a simplified version of the Neo combat. It's also very realistic. Now, maybe this changes. Maybe there's supernatural stuff later on. But so far, it's all been just thoroughly mundane and based in the real world. So you're beating up pirates and brigands and highwaymen and crooks and stuff like that, corrupt officials. But it's all just human people. And so there's not really any monsters or anything to fight, which is slightly less exciting. And I feel like the simplified combat, in a way, kind of makes sense for the open world. But also, I kind of miss a lot of the nuance that the Neo games had. And I think that between the boring objectives, the boring story, and then combat that is not as in-depth and not as nuanced and not as exciting as the previous combat, it just feels like a very strange experience overall. I guess I'm not sure why they made it, honestly. I don't know if this was like Sony hired them to make it. Were they forced to make it contractually? Like it doesn't feel like it has any spark to it. It just feels very by the numbers, like we're making an open world game here and we're checking all the boxes and that's what we're doing. But it just doesn't feel like special. It doesn't feel, it's just lacking spark all the way through it. So I put ultimately maybe 10, 12 hours into it. And I felt like I wasted my time, really. I kept waiting for something exciting to happen. I kept waiting for the game to open up. And to be fair, people have told me this game is like more than 100 hours long. And they say that more stuff opens up the further you go. But I need something now. I can't keep playing this for like another 20 hours hoping for something that might or might not come. I need something to lead me along now. And I don't, I need the moment-to-moment excitement of a gameplay. I don't play games with the promise of getting a reward 100 hours in the future. I play them for the immediate enjoyment of playing them, whether it's the traversal, whether it's the combat, whether it's the story, whatever. I need something to make me interested now, not that I'm going to suffer and then get to something good later. And I feel like maybe there is something cool in this game later. It's very possible. I mean, there's definitely the beginnings of a lot of systems there, lots of skills in the skill tree, tons of weapons and stuff, but none of it was feeling very special. None of it was feeling very inspired. And I just was wondering why Team Ninja did you make this? Because it just doesn't seem interesting whatsoever. So I bailed. I'm not going to finish it. Kind of personally offending myself here because I paid full price for this because I was really curious and I did want to support Team Ninja as a Neo fan, but I do feel like that money was wasted. I should have waited. I should have waited to get it on sale and let this be a lesson learned to myself to not buy games for full price anymore. And I'm sure that people in the games industry are like, no, that's the wrong lesson. But you know what? That's the lesson I'm taking. I usually buy stuff on sale. I should have done that here. I would feel a lot less salty about this if I had paid 20 instead of 70. So I guess lesson learned. That's okay. They can't all be bangers, I guess. Okay, that was Rise of the Ronin. I doubt I will be talking about that ever again, probably. All right, moving on to the new stuff this week. Ooh, it's going to be a tough show because I'm going to start off with something that's going to disappoint a lot of the people listening. I'm sure it will disappoint a lot of the people listening, but I got to be honest. If nothing else, you can trust me to be honest in all situations. I am a big believer in honesty. It's one of the core principles of my entire life in gaming and without gaming, and I'm just not going to bend it right now. So I'm going to be talking about 1000 Times Resist, a game that was recommended to me by several people, but most notably by John over at Gaming in the Wild. He's a great guy, and very often our tastes converge. This is one where our tastes did not converge, but I do appreciate the recommendation. And I'm glad that I looked at it. I think it's really, really interesting to other people, not to me. Sorry, that sounded really dickish. I didn't mean it to come out that dickish, but I think this is a case where I feel as though I am the problem and not the game itself is the problem. So what is this game? Good question. It's basically a visual novel, but it's got some aspects to it where you walk around and explore environments. I didn't get very far in it, just full disclosure. I got a code from the developer, so thank you very much for that. Appreciate it. I played a little bit. It's basically you're in the future. There's some kind of a plague or something that decimates humanity, and you're like a woman, and she's some kind of a, I don't know, technician or something, and she is going into this like memory VR thing to kind of understand reasons for things happening. Now again, I didn't get very far in this game. It seems very layered and complex as far as story goes, which I totally respect. But I do not feel it got off on the right foot for me. I felt a little bit like outside of what was going on. I wasn't very connected to the events. And so I was hoping to be a little bit more drawn in, and that would kind of carry me a little bit to unravel some of the secrets. But I didn't feel like the start was that good, honestly. I felt like I was kind of wondering what was going on. And I'm not the kind of person who feels compelled to figure out mysteries when the developer is kind of keeping you at a distance. Some people that really turns them on and really gets them going. But for me, it's like, meh, I'd rather do something else that is more invested in getting me in. So it didn't start off very well to me. And also I feel like there's a lot of aspects of this game that are designed to be absolutely not for me, which is why I say I am really the problem and not the game, right? Because I think it's well made. I mean, I think the graphics are nice. It's got good style. The concept of unraveling this kind of like future mystery by doing this VR memory thing is interesting as well. But it just didn't fit for me. So number one, I don't like talking to a lot of people. Like if that's the main action of a game, that's just kind of not it for me. I do play visual novels every once in a while, but they all have to have a twist. They have to have some kind of gameplay to them. And this one didn't quite have that. So the game starts out and you're kind of just like walking around like a high school. Again, I'm not a fan of high schools either. So that was another kind of knock against it, where there's no map. And so I'm kind of wandering the school looking for people to talk to. And then you talk to them. And the game didn't really get me in at the start. And so I was like not really invested in finding out what's happening. I was waiting for something juicy or something really appealing to drive me forward. And it didn't really happen in the time that I spent. So I basically just walked around this high school, talked to a few folks, went back and forth in time a little bit. And then there's this one portion where you kind of like zip around between I don't even know what they are, like memory nodes or something, where like you're in space, a 3D space, and then you see a dot, you push a button, you get zipped toward that dot, and then you look for more dots and you zip towards those dots. I guess it's supposed to represent, I don't know what, like tracking the thread of a thought or something. It just felt like, I don't know why it was there. It didn't really do anything for me. It just kind of felt like busy work, and that was not additive to the overall experience. So I don't have a lot to say about this other than the fact that it's hitting really hard for a lot of people. Like the people that like it really, really like it a lot. And I totally respect that. Again, I don't have any criticisms of this game other than the fact that, in fact, not criticism, but just like, I just don't think this is the game for me. I don't think I am the person for this game. And I think that's fine. Not every game is for every person. I've always said that. I still believe that. And I think this is a good example of where I just needed certain things in order to get involved and invested in this game. And this game just didn't have those for me. And that's totally all right. It's, you know, I don't think the developers needed to change it. I don't think they needed to cater to me specifically. It was just something that I just kind of like bounced off of and didn't feel compelled to go back. I didn't feel compelled to push hard and get myself in and to really unravel things. I was just like, okay, I mean, I get what you're doing, sci-fi story, and I'm sure it gets pretty interesting as you go. It just did not light my world on fire, and it bounced pretty quickly. And I'm sorry to disappoint everybody who was waiting to hear me talk about this, because, you know, sometimes I really do get into a sci-fi narrative. Sometimes I can really connect with a visual novel. There's been many that I've really enjoyed, but this just wasn't one of them. And that's okay. That's okay. Not ragging on the game. I'm not saying it's a bad game in any way. I just think it just wasn't for me, and that's all right. So that's all I'm going to say on 1000 Times Resist. Lots of people love it. There's tons of really good information about it. And in fact, John over at Gaming the Wild did a pretty amazing interview with the lead developer or the creator of the game. It's like an hour-long interview. It's really well thought out. Lots of interesting stuff. I listened to it myself yesterday. So definitely check that out if you like this game or are interested in more of that. John has a lot to say about it. And in fact, there's a giant discussion about the game going on in the Gaming the Wild Discord. So check it out. Find people who like this game. If you like this game, investigate it. There's a lot to unpack, a lot to unpeel, a lot to really suss out. I will not be doing that, and that's just how the chips fell for me this time. So again, sorry if you wanted to hear me get really invested in this game. I didn't, and that just happens sometimes. So 1000 Times Resist, not for me, but it is for a lot of people. And hopefully with the tips I just gave you, you can track those people down and enjoy this game on your own terms. Good luck. All right, moving on. Crown Wars: The Black Prince. This is a turn-based tactics game with a medieval-ish semi-fantasy setting. Pretty promising beginning where you play one of 4 houses, and you choose one from the beginning. There's like I don't know, like a hunting house where you have like an animal that comes with you. There's a traditional knight house. There's a alchemist house, and then there's an archer house. You choose one of these houses to be your protagonist, and then you get a team of people, and then you have to build up your empire by fighting off the surrounding kingdoms and making your way through, acquiring territory and stuff like that. So cool idea, cool premise. The turn-based tactics, I think, are a good start. It compares very, very lightly to like an XCOM, just in the sense that you have different classes, backing people up. I mean, not specifically XCOM, but I think maybe just the turn-based tactics genre in general. It has a lot of the hallmarks of it, and I think it's very solidly constructed. It makes sense. I think, archers in the back, taking their long shots. You've got people up front. I think some of the abilities are kind of neat, like having a bear as your buddy or a dog as your buddy is fun, and you get to control the animals separately on its own is a good idea, rather than it just being like an ability. So that was fine. I think the graphics are solid. They look, like isometric, like good enough. Some cute little animations when you do like a kill, some, like Warhammer coming down, or there's maybe like a stab or a flip or something like that, like good finishers. So that's fine. I think the basic premise of this game is good, but it did really fall down for me in a couple of ways. So full disclosure, I didn't get very far in this one, not because I wasn't enjoying it, but because it's really buggy. It's extremely buggy. I did some reading around, and I found that no matter what version you're playing this game on, what platform, it has a lot of bugs. So I'm guessing that the team who put this together didn't have a lot of experience in squashing bugs. It sounds worse on PC, but I played on PlayStation, and I had plenty of bugs. There were some times when I couldn't get a mission to activate. I had a couple of crashes. I think probably the worst bug was my characters could not attack, but the enemies still could. And so in a turn-based tactics game where your whole goal is like eliminating the enemy, if you can't attack, I mean, that's pretty much, it nerfs the entire game. So I took a video of it and sent it to developers of like, hey man, look, when I click the attack button, nothing happens except for like a little red flash. So I can't even play this game. I had to like reload a save and it fixed it, but then it would crop up again. And I was like, okay, so number one, just way buggier than I want to deal with. So that was like a big strike against it. But beyond that, I think the game itself has some issues in terms of actual design. Once you get into the nitty gritty, it's fine at first, but like once you get further, you start to notice the problem. So number one, most of the missions, if not all the missions, are on a timer, and it'll say like, oh, you've got 15 turns to eliminate the enemies. Why? There's nothing going on. The building's not on fire. There's no hostages. Nothing's happening. Why is there a turn limit? That doesn't make any sense, because if you are a slow, deliberate, and cautious turn-based tactics player, like I am sometimes, you want to take your time. You want to position. You want to move things around. You want to leverage cover. You want to leverage height differentials. You want to plan your strategy. What's the rush? I don't get what the rush is. There's no rush. Making the time limit even worse is that the enemy movement is a big, big problem in this game. So bear with me for a second. This is going to be a little bit in the weeds, but like the AI in this game totally favors itself. And what I mean by that is they don't advance very much, and they force the player to go on the offensive. And in a game like this, being on the offensive puts you at a disadvantage. So what you want to do sometimes is like, you have Overwatch. If you're familiar with the genre, you have Overwatch where you save all your ability points, you don't do anything, you hold still, and then you get ready for the enemy to move. And when the enemy moves, you hit them on their turn. It's a very effective tactic. It's like one of the core fundamentals of turn-based tactics is Overwatch. Almost every good TBT game has Overwatch, and this game does as well, but the enemies almost never advance. And so Overwatch is worthless. So that goes out the window, which is a problem. Also, you have to always extend yourself because they don't come to you. And that's a problem, because if you are always going out to meet the enemy, that's inevitably going to put you at a disadvantage. And the enemies have no problem making the most of that advantage, right? So like you send your archer out a little bit because they're too far away because the enemies haven't advanced and you can't reach them with your bow. And then once you move up a little bit, all the enemies come out and like kill your archer. And there was like no other thing you could have done. Or like, you have a couple of your soldiers move forward, the enemy like swarms, and then you're overwhelmed again because the enemies are not moving forward at all. It's just, the enemy is basically doing what you, the player, want to be doing. You want to be a little bit more defensive. You want to be a little more cautious and make the enemy come to you so that the odds are in your favor. You have a more favorable situation, but the AI is like, nah, I'm not doing that. And so that makes the game quite a bit more difficult to play, which I did not appreciate. I didn't think it was very good design, honestly. And the other thing that I had a problem with was in some of these missions, again, they all basically have a turn limit on them. You have to find the enemy. And I couldn't tell where they were. There was a couple missions where I killed a couple guys right off the bat, and then I'm looking for the rest of the enemies, and I just don't know where they are. The maps are pretty big. There's no red arrow pointing towards them. There's no indicator. There's no red dots on the map. You just have to like straight up search for them. And I guess that's a little bit of realism, I suppose. I mean, it's a video game. I don't need that much realism. But if you want to have me searching cautiously through the woods as kind of like a hide and seek sort of a situation, that might be okay. But number one, you got to get rid of the turn limits. And number two, you got to point me in somewhat the right direction, because there was multiple levels where I was wandering around just looking, not finding anybody. And I'm like, dude, this is boring. Like, where are the fights? Where are the opponents? It's just searching turn after turn after turn. It's fucking dull. So I think this game has a good fundamental concept. I think taking like, medieval type XCOM turn-based tactics, growing your empire, having different classes and stuff. I mean, it's all on the right track, but there's a lot of little decisions that contribute to being a very unpleasant experience, in addition to the fact that it's really buggy, just super, super buggy, like unplayable buggy. So I don't think I can recommend Crown Wars: The Black Prince. I mean, again, like I always say on the show, the best time to play any game is like 6 months after its release. So maybe come back to it in 6 months once they've balanced it, once they've fixed the AI, once they've ironed out some of the bugs. I honestly do think there's probably a fun experience to be had here, especially because I like the different classes, like, you know, like the animal handler, having the alchemist throw a bunch of like vials onto the battlefield and stuff. I mean, that's fun. I think there's fun to be had, but this game is just doesn't feel ready. It feels like they need to bake it for a while longer and just file off some of the rough edges and really just rethink why they're making some of these decisions, because I think they don't really contribute to the fun experience that a game should deliver, whether that means fun as in challenge or fun as in regular fun or whatever. This game is just not working the way that a turn-based tactics game should be working, and it's not because it's an original brand new idea. I think it just doesn't really hold together that well. So, all right, Crown Wars, The Black Prince. This is a miss for me, but I'll probably come back in 6 months and I bet it'll be fun then. Next up is a game I've been meaning to get to for quite a while, Slay the Princess. Playing this on PC, one of the rare times I play something on PC. This is a visual novel, which is about, you are a person, although I think that's a question mark, honestly. I've gotten a little bit into the game, and I think that maybe you're not a person, but I don't want to spoil anything. That gets revealed pretty quickly, so that's not a spoiler. You are a person who is sent to go kill a princess who is tied up in the basement of a cabin in the middle of some woods. And so this is a visual novel. You have choices, lots of story to read, a lot of narration happening. Graphics are black and white, but really well done. I like the style. It's kind of this sketchy, kind of rough illustrator style, a little bit informal feeling, which I think really works very well. It's very expressive. I like the look of the princess. I like the look of the game. I think it's very appealing. So good job on the graphics. I think that works. Something weird is going on, though, because it's not just like a straight up murder the princess game, because that would be creepy and sick and wrong. The princess apparently is supposed to be evil, and the narrator keeps telling you, you know, don't question it too much. Just go with it. You got to kill her. Like, you know, just do your job, etc., etc. And so you'll read some text or hear the text narrated to you. You make some choices. And, you know, like when you get to the house, it'll be like, you know, go downstairs or don't go downstairs or look around. Like you have all these different various choices. And then depending on what you do, it sends you down different paths. Now you can do many things. And I think that the game has accounted for a lot of the choices so far. I have not finished it all the way. Oh, it's a pretty short experience from what I hear, but real life got in the way and I had to put it on hold for a second. But I did play, you know, a couple of rounds of it, I guess. It's kind of broken up into rounds where you think you've done the thing, you think you've killed the princess, but then it restarts, and the restart is part of the story as well. So you're not sure why it's restarting. You're not sure what's going on. And so I've done a couple of these cycles where I go through, I either kill the princess or don't, or I do something different, and then I end the cycle and then I restart the cycle, but I haven't figured out why I'm in a cycle. And I haven't figured out ultimately what the end goal of this is. So I think it's pretty enigmatic. I think it's pretty compelling. I think the voice work is great. I think the graphics are great. I think it's an interesting premise that I really want to get to the bottom of. And I think it plays pretty quickly. Like just clicking through the text is fine. Reading the bits is fine. Like you don't ever have too much text. It's always just like just enough to give you the flavor. The choices are pretty direct and to the point, and I think that works really well. Overall, it's really good, and I was a little disappointed I didn't have the time to finish it before the show. I was really hoping I would get to the end of it and like give a final verdict on it, but that'll have to wait until next week. But so far, I dig it. I think it's really cool as far as visual novels go. Very different. It definitely has its own identity, and I'm very, very, very curious to see what is going to end up happening here. Am I going to really want to kill a princess? Am I not? Is that even really what's going on? It's hard to say. So that's all I can share right now. I am going to come back and finish it, and I will probably have a final wrap up on next week's show. But so far, definitely a thumbs up. I definitely like it. It's weird. It's offbeat. It's creepy. It can be a little bit gory at times. Sometimes I'm not going to give away anything, but you can steer the princess in a few different ways, and some of those ways are kind of gross. So I dig it. I think it's different, man. It's different, and I like different. So. Thumbs up so far to Slay the Princess, and I'll come back next week with a full wrap up. Final game of the show is called Soul Link. I had never heard of this one before, didn't know anything about it. Got an email from the publisher, and they sent me a code in the email, so thank you very much for that. This is for the Switch, and it is a puzzle game. It looks a lot like Tetris. It's not exactly like Tetris, but there's like, you know, the Tetramino shapes. There's also other shapes as well. And the point of this game is it's 2D, and you have a gap in the middle of the screen. There's like a road on the left, a road on the right, and then a gap in the middle of the screen. And so what you need to do is you need to drop these Tetris type shapes into the gap and build a bridge. You win the level when you have enough blocks there to connect the left side to the right side. So the game kind of watches and keeps track. And as soon as there's a viable path forward, the game stops and then you get tallied on your score. So it's interesting because it falls like Tetris, like it looks like Tetris, but then you have to take into account that there's physics. Like you can't just place a block and it stays. Like the block has to have support. There has to be like structure underneath it. So if you have like an L-shaped block and you put it on the very edge, it's going to fall. The gravity will pull it down into the gap, and then you won't be able to build anything. So you have to keep that in mind. So not only is it just filling in the empty space of the gap, that doesn't work because the blocks will fall through. You have to build from the left, like build a bridge from the left to the right, and then build a bridge from the right to the left, and kind of like meet in the middle, which is a lot more challenging than it sounds. It starts off pretty easy, but then once you get the hang of it, you're like, oh snap, like there's some obstacles. Sometimes there's some trash in the way. Sometimes there's, like complicating factors that make it a lot harder to build that bridge. So that in itself, I think, is a pretty interesting premise. But then what happens is there are little stars in each level. And if you build your bridge in a certain way as to not only cross the gap, but to also touch one of the stars, you earn that star. And then the more stars you get, you can unlock special abilities. And that to me was really what put it over the top. So spoiler, I like this game. I think it's pretty neat. I'm still playing it right now. I have not finished it, but I think it's pretty cool. So the abilities you get, I think three uses of per ability per level. And it's weird stuff like expand. Expand was the first one you get. So if a block is falling and you click expand on it, it grows to like 3 times the size. It's also heavier, but also it's larger. So if you have a big gap that you can't quite cross, and then one of those long skinny pieces falls, you hit expand on it and it grows to like 4 times the size. So all of a sudden you can bridge the gap. That's pretty cool. There's also one that's called like sticky or something like that, where when the block falls, you hit sticky and it just sticks to wherever it is. So like gravity stops working on it. So you can drop it wherever you want. And as long as it's touching another block, it can be precarious. It can be hanging over the side. It can be, just like balancing on an end or something. And if you sticky it, it'll just stay. So you can use that as a solid, firm point to be the foundation for the next part of your bridge. There's, I think, 8 or 10 different abilities. I haven't unlocked them all yet, but I think it's really cool. And some of them are like time stop. Some of them are, you have this lightning that like destroys pieces below you if you need to clean up an area, stuff like that. So there's cool powers that you can activate that you unlock as you go, which I think gives a nice layer of complication. And I think the levels themselves are also nicely complicated. You think you're going to blow through this game, but then you don't, because you do have to really start thinking about weight, gravity, physics, how do the powers come in? And I have hit some levels where I'm like, okay, these are really tough. I need to really start leveraging these powers in a better way. And some of them seem like levels that like you can finish, but you're not going to get all the stars. You're going to have to come back to these once you've unlocked some other powers, because like, for example, there's one area where I couldn't get a block to move fast enough. I'm like, okay, I probably need the time stop power in order for me to move this block quickly enough, like stop time so it stops falling, move it properly, and then I can get the star that I need. So I love stuff like that. I think it works really well. I think it's a very approachable, clear, easy to understand premise, but it also has nice nuance to it, some nice complication, and I think it's a good reuse of like Tetris blocks. Tetris is amazing. I love Tetris. We'll love it forever. But I think this is a neat spin on Tetris that I haven't quite seen before, and it's taking elements from various different games, Tetris and various bridge builder games, and I think melding them into something that is neat and fun. So I really like Soul Link a lot. Been playing it every night before bed on my Switch, and I think it's good stuff. So if that sounds like a good time to you, I think it's definitely a good time. So check that one out. Soul Link is very good stuff. All right, that is going to do it for the main portion of the show. Gonna bounce in a second here, but before we go, I do have a couple of non-game things to mention this week, and actually quite a bit of non-game stuff to mention this week. It's kind of a weird week because real life stuff, real life work has kept me quite busy, and I didn't have as much time for games as I would have liked. But sometimes after you've had a long day of work, you don't have the juice to play some game, but what you do want to do is watch a movie, or maybe like you're with your significant other if you have one, and you want to just sit on the couch and snuggle with them and watch a show, or maybe your kid's around and you want to watch something with them, or maybe you want some quiet time because you're a solo person. That's fine too. and you want to just super chill, get a slice of pizza or a bowl of cereal or whatever. You want to just like hang out. And so I had a lot of downtime this week in the sense of too tired to play games, but not ready for bed. So I think I'll probably just watch a show and end up watching more TV and movies this week than I have in quite a while. So I'll share those with you right now. All right. First up, what are we watching? Oh, Damsel on Netflix. This is a fantasy movie starring Millie Bobby Brown, who is from Stranger Things, and she is playing a princess who gets sacrificed to a dragon. This is not a spoiler, it's like in the trailer. Because the people of this kingdom are assholes and they need to, for whatever reason, sacrifice some princesses. So she is supposed to go down there and get eaten, but she ends up surviving. Overall, it was fine. I think some of the special effects were pretty cool. I like the dragon design was really notable. It was still your classic kind of like medieval dragon, European style dragon, but there were some changes to it where it looked almost cat-like in some ways, perhaps tiger-like. And so it looked a little bit more like a Monster Hunter design where you looked at that thing and you're like, ooh, that looks scarier and probably more lethal than the average, kind of sitting around scaly dragon with his pile of gold and stuff like that. It was fine. To be perfectly brutally honest, though, I don't think her acting is really good in this particular film. I don't know if it was the director or what, but she didn't have a lot of range. And I felt like a lot of the scenes, she was kind of hitting the same notes. So I guess it was fine. It was okay. But, if it hadn't have been actiony, dragony, sci-fi, fantasy, I think it would have been a pretty flat movie if judged based on the performances. But we didn't have to do that because it was all about dragons and stuff. It was fine. I thought it was kind of neat. Had a good time with it. Next movie I saw on Netflix was significantly better. Atlas, starring Jennifer Lopez, J-Lo, Jenny from the Block herself. This was basically Titanfall. Titanfall 2, in fact. And I don't say that to be flip. I mean, there were many parts of this which looked lifted directly from Titanfall. I mean, the Titans themselves, the way that they interfaced, a lot of the trust moments in the story, a lot of the landscapes looked similar, some of the weapons. I mean, a lot of it. Not all of it, but boy, I'm actually kind of surprised that they didn't get sued or they got away with this because I feel like it was so close to Titanfall in so many ways. But I will say, Titanfall is rad. And I think that's a great game. I like it, that IP. I think they should do more with it. And so it was kind of neat to see Titanfall the movie. Honestly, I think J-Lo did a pretty good job of her role. She plays like this scientist who's studying these rogue AIs. And so she's teaming up with the robot to go after them. And plenty of action, plenty of explosions. A little bit of Titanfall, a little bit of Helldivers, a little bit of Halo, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And it all came together. And in fact, the director said he was pretty inspired by Titanfall. Obviously, dude. Obviously. So anyway, it was worth a watch, though. If you like Titanfall and you go into it thinking this is going to be Titanfall, you're going to have a great time. It's not going to win an Oscar or anything, but I thought it was a great way to spend an afternoon. For sure. We also watched Blue Beetle. That was for free on HBO or Max or whatever they're calling it these days. It was fine. Blue Beetle is like a real like C-rank DC hero. I wouldn't be surprised if most people don't even know who he is or has never heard of him. I've heard of him, but only a little bit. I was never a fan. I didn't read a lot of DC growing up. So I knew of him. I knew what he looked like and stuff, basically. The original version was just he was a rich guy who did a bunch of inventions, kind of like Iron Man as far as I know. But this was a reboot where there's like this beetle technology from outer space and it bonds with this human person. They did incorporate some of the old Blue Beetle mythology. Like he was in the movie in terms of a concept and in some of the backstory, but it was really focused on this new family. Definitely playing up as like a Hispanic kind of attracted film where the main character was Hispanic, his family's Hispanic. They spent a lot of time talking about, Spanish culture or Mexican culture and that whole thing, La Familia, basically. So it was okay. I mean, it was all right. The acting was decent. I think the special effects were fine. I think the problem with Blue Beetle, though, is that it's coming on the tail end of like 8,000 other superhero movies. If we had not seen this exact film so many times before, I think I would be more impressed with it. But it just is like now your basic superhero movie. So it was cool enough. It didn't really stand out. It wasn't bad, but again, kind of like Atlas, it was like, I didn't expect too much of it. And I wanted a good way to spend 90 minutes, and I thought it was fine. Checked all the boxes. There was enough thrills and enough cool looking special effects and stuff. But it was, I don't think I would ever watch it again. And honestly, if you asked me to name details about it 6 months from now, I'm not sure that I would be able to. So it was just like, it was okay. It's tough to be a superhero movie these days because there's been so many of them. You really got to do something special to stand out. And it didn't do anything special to stand out. It didn't do anything bad. Just didn't stand out. But I will say, one thing that Blue Beetle gets right is that it was better than Madam Web, which is what I also watched. This was on Netflix, I believe. So I'm not familiar with Madam Web, the character. I know she's a Marvel character. I've heard of her, but she's never been in any stories that I've read, never been a central character or anything. I looked it up on Wikipedia, and like trying to read a comic book character's backstory is like looking into the mouth of insanity. It's just like weird storyline after weird storyline and lack of continuity and a lot of coincidences and a lot of stuff that doesn't make sense. And I'm like, this probably was okay reading this story bit by bit over the last 20 years or something, but like reading a synopsis of it, it really makes you seem like you're an insane person. So I was like, okay, whatever. But they took this character, Madam Web, who's like a clairvoyant, not a telepath, but like a fortune teller. No, future teller. I don't know that she would pick you lotto numbers, but she would definitely tell your future. She had this ability to like look at the future and change fate based on making choices based on what she just saw in her visions. And sometimes her visions were only like 30 seconds in the future, and sometimes they were a little further. But there was also this weird other stuff in there about like a spider tribe that was from South America, and they got their powers from the spider bite, but it had nothing to do with actual Spider-Man. And I wasn't sure, are we in the Marvel universe, or is this like one of those, we bought the rights a million years ago, but we're not in the MCU? It didn't seem like they were. They didn't reference like Spider-Man. They seemed to like not know who Spider-Man was, even though the main bad guy had a suit that looked exactly like Spider-Man's, except for the colors were different. So I was just kind of those weird, like, am I supposed to link this to something else? Is this story continued from somewhere else? It was just this weird kind of nebulous middle ground of the whole thing. But worst of all, acting was not great. Although I think the lead character, I don't know her name is, but she did an okay job. But the story, the script was awful. It was like literally, I kept looking at my wife going, was this written by AI? Like, I'm not even joking. Like it seemed to hit all the beats that you think a movie would have, but none of them resonated. None of them made sense. A lot of the dialogue was just really bad. A lot of the smaller things that the characters were doing just didn't make sense. I'm like, this seems like what you would get from ChatGPT if you said, please write me a script about spider-based superheroes, but none of them are actually Spider-Man, and make it cool. And then you got it. And if you did like one pass of edits through it, it seems like that's what you would get. I had trouble comprehending that it was written by human beings. Even bad writers, I think, would do a better job than this. I honestly think, not even joking, I think that it was written by AI. And I think that maybe somebody's taking credit for it, or maybe some hack writer in Hollywood was like, well, I can just do this. I'll do ChatGPT and get this out of here, and I'll sell the script. I honestly think that's what happened, because it just doesn't make sense otherwise. I don't know how a regular person would write a movie like that. It was not great. Very little action, very little development. It just was not a fun movie, and it was really flat and boring. So, yuck. What else did we watch? We finished Bodkin. This was the murder mystery / comedy / dramedy set in England, starring the guy from SNL. What the hell is his name? He was also in Last Man on Earth. Oh, Jesus. Will Forte. That's what it was. He does a good job in this. The mystery was fun. We finished it up. It was nice, and I think we've been watching a lot of Irish themed stuff lately, so it was kind of all of a piece. You see the quaint towns, the ocean, the green, everything. Everybody's got the nice accent and everything. So it was a good watch. We enjoyed it. We thought the mystery got a little bit too convoluted at the end, and some of the beats didn't quite land. I think they kind of wrapped it up just a little bit too quickly. I think they should have lingered on some of those beats a little bit longer. But overall, definitely worth a watch. That was good. And it's funny because even before we watched Bodkin, we had favorited a TV show called Obituary. Just we had put on our list a while ago and meant to get back to it. And this was also in Ireland. This was also a murder mystery. This one was about a woman who writes obituary columns, but the work dries up because people aren't dying quickly enough and she's losing money. So she decides to go and kill people to speed up the process so she can write more obituaries and get paid. Obviously, it's kind of a dark comedy, but it's interesting because the same actress was in both. It was like totally random. I believe her name is Siobhan Cullen, if I'm pronouncing that right. And she's great. I think she's wonderful. A great actress. She plays A really nasty lady in both series, but in a different nasty way. And she's got good presence, just good energy. It's really entertaining to watch her, even though like half the time you're like, God, you're so gross, or like, oh, I don't like the choices you're making here, lady. You're making me uncomfortable. But she's doing a great job. I think she's a great actress. Obituary is really funny. Again, I think the mystery is getting a little bit too complicated, but we'll see. But so far, it's been entertaining for sure, especially when she starts leaning into the murders. You get a real kind of goofy, I am not a professional killer vibe to it, which I think really works. Last movie we watched this week was Reanimator. This is from like 83 or 84 or something like that. Classic horror movie, and I'm a horror movie fan. But for some reason, this one had just never found its way into my VCR back in the day, or it never found its way into my streaming service lately. I saw somebody talking about it a couple days ago, and I was like, oh man, I forgot the movie even existed. I should probably check it off my list. It's one of those movies that like every horror fan references, every horror fan knows. And I feel dumb because I haven't seen it, because like when these references come up, I'm like, oh yeah, I know Reanimator. Yeah, I get it. But I haven't seen it. So I'm like, this is the time. This is the now. Anyway, it did live up to expectation. It was quite good. It was quite funny. It was silly. It was gory. I would definitely slate it as a horror comedy, not really just a horror film. Some really ridiculous stuff happens in there, and some of the performances are just so goofy they're good. I will say it was almost a perfect movie for us, except in one particular scene that I think my wife was doing some IMDb research as we were watching, and she's like, this scene got voted as one of the most gratuitous nude scenes in a horror movie, and I totally agree. About almost to the end of the movie, one of the bad guys captures the leading lady, who has been kind of like the romantic interest of the, I don't want to say hero. I don't think there's actually any heroes in this movie at all, which is interesting about the movie. I think they're all bad people, except for the girl. She was pretty innocent the whole time, but like every guy who's in this movie is basically bad in one way or another, which was kind of interesting in and of itself, an interesting choice. But anyway, one of the worst bad guys, who is at this point a zombie and a severed head who is still talking, he captures the woman, and I'm not going to go into details, but basically it's basically like a rape scene, which I did not care for. It was super unnecessary. It honestly kind of took away from the rest of the film, because it just didn't need to be there, and we felt kind of uncomfortable watching it. So we kind of fast forwarded through that part. It was only like a minute long or something. It wasn't like super explicit, but it was explicit enough, and we were like, okay, just fast forward, and then we got past it. So other than that, I thought the movie was great. I mean, I really laughed a lot in the other parts, and I thought it was clever and goofy, and it just, it was one of those where you've heard about it a million times and you finally watch it, and yeah, it actually was that good. So that was cool. Too bad about that rape scene though. That was not necessary. And finally, not a movie, but I want to give a shout out to any Elden Ring fans out there who also watch YouTube. My son came across this the other day, and we started watching it. It's kind of a hoot. It's called Elden Ring Fights, and so that's the channel's name. Somebody must have clearly modded a PC version of Elden Ring, and they take all of the characters in the game and drop them onto like a beach, and they just like fight. And so there will be like these scripted fights. It'll be like everybody in Eastern Liurna versus everybody from, I don't know, whatever plateau or something. And they line them up before the match starts. You kind of see who's going to be taking part. And then they go in like a single elimination tournament where it'll start off with like a wolf on one side and a crab on the other. And then whoever wins, like let's say the crab wins, wolf goes, crab stays. Then they bring in like, a zombie, and then they fight. And then maybe the zombie wins and the crab goes and the zombie stays. And they keep fighting up and up and up and up and up, starting with I'm not sure how they're ranked exactly, but obviously like the peons at the beginning, and then saving like the big bosses for the end. Each video inevitably ends up with like Millennia or like Placidus Axe or something like that. And so you're like, okay, so clearly the big guns at the end. But there's also other ones too. Some of them are definitely more interesting and funny than the others. My favorite one so far has been just the animals, like all the various animals, like the octopus, wolf, bear, crab, lizards, or whatever. Like all the animals fighting it out is pretty funny. And then every once in a while you'll see a particular enemy that just like blows away like 8 or 9 enemies in a row. Like their moveset is just really tricky to the other enemies that it fights. And maybe it's not that tough to fight in real life, but when you see it against the other enemies, it's really kind of cool. Like, and sometimes you see moves you've never seen before. Maybe you like take some of these enemies out so quickly that you just never notice they have a full moveset, and so seeing some of these leaps and dodges and rolls and stuff, we've had a few surprises where we're like, oh my God, I didn't know that guy did that. And oh, look at that move. That was so cool. I've never seen that before. So that was pretty fun. So if the idea of watching characters and NPCs and bosses in Elden Ring fight each other, fully controlled by AI, it sounds like a good time to you, it's definitely worth a watch. I mean, you're not going to watch all of them because after a while, like, you kind of get the gist of it. But like, watch a couple of them. It's a pretty good time for sure. That was Elden Ring Fights. That's on YouTube. All right, folks, that is a show. If you are listening this far, you are a true fan, a true connoisseur of the So Videogames show, and I want to just really quickly apologize to you for the late debut of this episode. This has been a pretty busy week, and I have been really dealing with a lot of work issues and stuff. Nothing bad, but just like, sometimes the stuff piles up and it's like, no, can't do the podcast today because I got to do XYZ. Nope, can't do the podcast today because I got this other thing coming up. And, you got to prioritize whatever pays the bills. So thanks very much for being patient. I apologize for the delay. Hopefully this episode is worth it. And for now, before the music kicks in, as always, just want to ask you to please leave reviews, share the show on social media, but most important of all, please recommend it to your friends because nothing beats word of mouth. Also, if you'd like to help the show with the continued cost of running the podcast, you can do that over at patreon.com/the So Videogames podcast. Even $1 helps for sure. Anything helps. And if you would like to join our Discord, that is now free of charge. Just drop me an email, drop me a message on social media, whatever. I'll hook you up for free, no problem. Come and continue the conversation. And as always, I do want to get your questions and your comments. Hit me up at sovideogamespodcast@gmail.com. You can also hit me on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky. It's my name, BradGallaway, all A's, no O's. And this is going to do it for episode 390. Thank you again for joining me here on the So Videogames podcast, and I'll see you next week.